QPR, their manager Martí Cifuentes has been placed on gardening leave. The Telegraph is reporting it's because discussions are ongoing over ending his tenure at Loftus Road. He's said to have clashed with QPR's board in recent weeks over this future strategy of the club. It comes as he's been linked with the West Brom job following the sacking of Tony Mowbray, although the Telegraph is also now reporting that Cifuentes isn't on the shortlist for that job. Which is interesting. Now, we did talk about those links in Tomorrow Time last Sunday, Justin, whether he would be a good appointment for West Brom, which doesn't seem as relevant now anyway. But what have you made of all this?
Bit messy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting a bit messy. I mean, firstly, actually, gardening leave is the best gig, isn't it?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. Getting paid to do absolutely nothing.
You can go on holiday.
Yeah.
You can go on holiday. You can get in the sangrias on the Isle of Mallorca, wherever he wants to go on holiday. I'm just picking out places here, but yeah, the best gig. But yeah, it is getting messy at QPR. I think there are two things that sort of come to the surface here. Is Cifuentes' has been turned. Yeah, obviously there was talk of representatives talking to West Brom, despite him not being on shortlist, which is obviously weird. Obviously, the representatives didn't do a great job there. But yeah, the fallings out or the discontent behind the scenes with the board over the long-term direction of the club, again, that's a bit of a worry, because if you've got an ambitious manager here who wants to push QPR higher, and it needs to be the case because they've been up and down this season, and obviously the board are disagreeing with the direction. What are they disagreeing on? Budgets? The recruitment? What is it? It's a lot.
Whenever it's the future strategy of the club, I always instantly assume it's budget.
Yeah. This is it. And again, I would then start to question it with QPR. Is what is their long term direction? Are they going to end up like a Cardiff? Are they going to keep swilling around because they're making a lot of decisions, and Mick Beale, despite him leaving under a cloud, let's just put it like that, his head was turned, wasn't it, very very early on into his tenure. Martí Cifuentes has only been there 18 months, give or take, and his head's been turned already. So what is going on behind the scenes at QPR?
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people on social media have been laughing at Martí Cifuentes, pointing the finger and what have you. I think it sounds like the relationship is so bad with the board that he wanted out anyway. Mm-hmm. And whether West Brom wanted him or not, I think he was going to go. So I don't think it's this big embarrassing move that's backfired on him, like him putting down the cards and saying, this is what's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But from a QPR perspective, it looks like he's going, doesn't it? And I think that is a big, big blow, because Cifuentes has had a pretty mixed time of it this season, but of course did a fantastic job last year. Really got QPR out of a bit of a pickle, didn't he? Because they were looking like they were on a one-way course to relegation. This season's been a bit odd because it's almost entirely been centred around one good run of form, and it's been sandwiched between two poor runs of form. He seems to be a very streaky manager, which we mentioned in Tomorrow Time on Sunday. But if you look at his time overall at QPR, they're always in a really good run of form or a really bad run of form. There's no in between. But this season, he's had to deal with a lot of things, hasn't he? He's not had the strongest of squads at QPR. They've had a lot of injuries. Recruitment hasn't been great either. And it's easy to forget QPR aren't the best run club, because about 18 months ago, they were in serious danger of going down, weren't they? We were talking a lot about the problems behind the scenes. Cifuentes has been a big plaster over those cracks at QPR, and it'll be very, very interesting to see what it looks like under there now when that plaster gets ripped off, which it looks like it's going to.
Yeah, and again, we're looking at a board here that makes some strange decisions with recruitment. That's not been at its best. Like the likes of Jancella hasn't quite hit the fold. It's just one example of recruitment not really working the way or as effectively as it has or it can do. The appointment of Gareth Ainsworth after Mick Beale, the persistence with Gareth Ainsworth despite form telling you that he's not the man.
The vast majority of managers they've had over the years as well, really. I mean, yes. I know Mick Beale started well before it kind of died out a bit towards the end, but before him, QPR didn't have a great track record with managers, did they?
No, and Mark Warburton did a cracking job, but there are Steve McLaren's in there as well, etc. For QPR, they strike a lot of similarities with Cardiff, and I know QPR fans will look at that and go, well, Cardiff have just gone down. That's not the case. the managerial decision making isn't great. Recruitment isn't great. They tick a lot of the same boxes that Cardiff have been ticking over the years. So that's where my concerns lie. It's a big summer for them. It has to be, I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but there has to be a lot of change, a hell of a lot of change. Otherwise, yes, they can find themselves in a similar position to other clubs before them that have gone down to League One.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a completely unfair comparison comparing them to Cardiff, because as I say, I think Cifuentes has been really carrying the club forward, in quotation marks. They haven't gone that much forward, but they're certainly not in as bad a position as they were before. Yeah, steady hand is a sort of the statement I would agree with. So yeah, where they go next is going to be really, really fascinating. Where West Brom go next is going to be really fascinating as well, if Cifuentes isn't on the shortlist for that particular job. But while on the theme of managers, Justin, Jack Wilshere is reportedly going to be given the Norwich manager's job on a permanent basis. EFL Analysis say he's going to be officially installed after the final game of the season against Cardiff. Now, he's been in interim charge after the sacking of Johannes Hoff-Thorup just last week. Only had the one game in charge so far. But it sounds like Norwich may have got their man figured out already.
It's probably had him figured out since he was appointed as one of the coaches at Norwich, potentially. Ben Napper, obviously formerly of Arsenal. There's clearly a link there. I think it's an appointment that intrigues me. I know there was talk about it possibly being a bit too early for Jack Wilshere, and I would agree with that. But that being said, sometimes you just got to throw these managers into the deep end and see what they can do. The thing is with Norwich, though, again, we're talking about Stuart Webber making some poor decisions over the years. Ben Napper, his tenure hasn't got off to the best of starts.
Say that again.
Sacking David Wagner, bringing in Johannes Hoff-Thorup, a lot of sort of back slapping, real good job sort of thing, getting him in and then sacking him and admitting it was a mistake, and then you're going for a manager that has absolutely no experience whatsoever. It's a risk if Wilshere is appointed as permanent manager. But I think Wilshere's got a lot of good coaching credentials. He's come from the Arsene Wenger School of Football. That's a big one. And then, of course, he was the under-18s manager as well. So there are more boxes ticked than others, like a Wayne Rooney, for example. But that being said, experience is a big thing.
Yeah, we should just emphasise at the moment it is just reports. Gary O'Neill is still the favourite with the bookies at the time of recording. But Wilshere has made it quite clear to the media that he wants to be the Norwich manager. And everything you said there is absolutely correct, Justin. Ben Napper was the loans manager at Arsenal, so he must have worked pretty closely with Wilshere, considering he used to work in the youth team at Arsenal, and now, of course, Napper is the sporting director of Norwich, and Wilshere's followed him there. So they clearly have some sort of a relationship there. Wilshere, very highly thought of as a coach, particularly when he was at Arsenal. He was seen as a bit of a blow to Arsenal when he decided to go to Carrow Road, and maybe he was brought in at Norwich as kind of like an understudy, kind of like, no, it's a poor comparison, Omar Reitzer at Cardiff, where he was brought in.
Of all the examples you could bring about is the disaster.
The Reitzer one was interesting because he joined in the summer and then literally a couple of months later he was made the manager.
Yeah.
So
maybe Liam Rossini at Derby is a better example.
Maybe, but I don't think Derby had the foresight in that sense. I think there was always a sense with Reitzer, for example, that Cardiff thought he could be the manager in the long term, but obviously it's not worked out that way. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether Wilshere actually does get the job after that game on the final day. Of course, he's only had the one game in charge, which was a 0-0 against Middlesbrough. I don't think Norwich have looked at that and gone, yeah, sold.
That's the guy.
Yeah, that's the man to take us forward. But yeah, it's going to be very, very fascinating. Justin, I'm always a big fan of giving young coaches a chance. Because if you don't give them a chance, you never know how good they are as a manager.
Yeah, it is important to give young coaches a chance. Obviously, they need the opportunity. And again, sometimes you don't know until you just throw them in and see what they can do. That being said, sometimes it is too early. We've seen countless examples over the years in the Championship of doing that. And I think with Norwich, you've got a lot of variables at play here in that there's going to be pressure because they're going to have a budget to spend. And that's going to put a bit of pressure on the manager to improve those players. And again, with Wilshere, is the target going to be promotion for Norwich? Can he deliver that? Because I think he's a coach, if he does get put in charge of a club, he's one that's going to improve players first and then results later, because that's what he's been used to. So that's something that would concern me. But look, like you said, you've got to give young coaches a chance. And for me, Jack Wilshere's done his dues. Others haven't. They've not deserved the opportunity. I'm not going to name names. But as I say, Jack Wilshere has done a good job.
I think we all know who you're aiming at there.
But yeah, Jack Wilshere, as I say, he's earned his stripes.
Yeah. Speaking of giving young managers a chance, Alan Sheehan is the new permanent Swansea manager. He's been in interim charge since Luke Williams was sacked back in February. He's won 7 of his 12 games in charge and is now set to continue after this season. And you like what Sheehan's done so far, Justin. So you'll be a big fan of this, won't you?
Yeah, I really like Alan Sheehan. I think he's a very switched on coach. He really, really is. His record at Swansea as interim across 2 spells, by the way, is a very positive one. He's got over 40% win rate in both his spells. I don't think he's full on Swansea way, if that makes sense. He's not ingrained in that style, in that philosophy that Swansea want their managers to be. I think he's a bit more flexible in his approach. He adapts more to his opposition, and I think that's more important. I think developing style of play on a technical level is important, but it doesn't guarantee results. Flexibility and a lack of stubbornness are very good traits to have as a coach, CC Russell Martin.
Yeah, well, Sheehan's done very well, hasn't he? This was essentially an audition for him, and he's passed it with flying colours. And as I say, I'm always a big advocate for giving coaches a chance to show what they're about, particularly if you're a club like Swansea, who emanate a lot of mid-table energy. You may as well take
top half, though.
Oh, yes, absolutely right. Still mid-table, though. You may as well take a risk and see what happens, because there isn't anything to lose. The spin side of that risk is this is just sort of a prolonged new manager bounce. Is this a sort of prolonged new manager bounce? Which it may very well be, but you only find that out by giving him a chance. And for all we know, Alan Sheehan might be a managerial genius in waiting. So it is interesting how this is going to go. It's also interesting because there have been a few reports of Swansea apparently looking elsewhere despite Sheehan's success. So whether they approach someone, they turn them down, and they've just gone with Sheehan, I don't know. But if those reports are correct, it would imply Swansea aren't wholly convinced that Sheehan is the right way to go. I don't know if you've got a take on that, Justin.
I think it's just interim coaches as a generality. I don't really know. Generalisation.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. I'm just make up words. Why not? I think the one weirdly that comes to my mind is Frankie McAvoy at Preston all those years ago. You know, when Alex Neil was sacked, Frankie McAvoy, his assistant, came in, and by all means,
very random
to
come up with.
But contextually, it makes sense because he had a very good spell as interim boss, was handed the permanent role, and then it didn't go very well in the full season after that. And then Milo came in.
Let's look at one a bit closer to home. Omar Risa.
Well, this is it. This is the problem with giving interim managers the full-time job. There's always an air of caution with it. And yeah, you should err on the side of caution. But I think
the difference is with Swansea, they're a mid-table side who've got nothing to lose. Cardiff had a lot to lose and they've lost it now.
Yeah, Cardiff had a hell of a lot to lose. And yeah, you are right. They've lost it, the championship status, because of bad decision making. But I think Alan Sheehan, he's been a coach at Swansea for a while. He gets it. He understands the philosophy, the style of play, the needs, the expectations of the club. And he's there, and he'll know what he needs to go in and recruit. But as I say, just because he's an interim boss, assistant going into a full-time role, a head coach role, you do have to err on the side of caution, naturally.
Yeah, got a lot of young managers in the Championship nowadays, haven't we? A lot of young managers.
What's old for a manager now? It used to be 60s, but
we're approaching the age where we would be the average age for a manager, which
terrifying.
Is quite sad, really.
We should be in our peak years as well.
Physically. We should be, but we're not, unfortunately. But that's just how it goes, Justin. We'll have a quick break, but before that, we've got a quick announcement ahead of our final Jameson Weekend Hero of the season this Sunday. Now, our friends at Jameson have partnered up with fellow EFL partners Puma for a very special collaboration. Both Jameson and Puma get what makes football so special, Justin. As we've seen all season on the Weekend Hero, it's something to be enjoyed across generations. So to celebrate the generational love that unites football fans, Jameson and Puma have released a brand new limited edition collection, which includes this beautiful special edition bottle. Look at that, Justin. It's a beauty, isn't it?
It's bloody swanky, I tell you. It is good to see the Puma detail on it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I really, really like that. Tom, can I have one?
Yeah.
Producer Tom says yes. So there you go. I'm getting one. But we're giving away one of these bottles to the winner of this Sunday's Jameson Weekend Hero. So if you want to get your hands on one of these special edition bottles that are so special, even I'm getting one. And then send us a voice note right now on WhatsApp. It just needs to be about a minute long. The number is in the show notes, and you could be the winner of our final Jameson Weekend Hero of the season. You must be over 18 to enter, UK only, and T's and C's apply. Justin, we'll have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about, oh God, the EFL Awards. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Now, let's have a chat about the EFL Awards from Sunday night, which have caused a bit of stir on social media in the past few days. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Second Tier Awards coming up next week, the proper awards, Justin, not these Tim Pot awards. The EFL were actually very nice and invited us to the ceremony. So
let's just slag them off now, naturally.
We couldn't go to them, so we probably shouldn't talk them down, but they are pathetic compared to our awards. Anyway, most of the controversy from those awards seems to centre around their choice for Championship Player of the Season, which went to Sheffield United's Gustavo Hamer. Now, James Trafford and Dan James were the others shortlisted for the award, but I've seen a lot of blowback to this announcement on social media, including from Hannibal Medri, of course, James Trafford's teammate at Burnley. Justin, while giving away as little as possible regarding who would be your choice for the Second Tier Player of the Season, which will be announced next week, were you surprised about Hamer winning this?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really, no. I think there's a lot of variables at play here. I think let's consider this. Has there been an outstanding singular team carrier this season? No. Has there been an outstanding goal scorer this season? No. Has there been an outstanding creator this season? No. If Josh Sargent wasn't injured for a third of the season, he might have fit that bill. Similarly with Haji Wright as well. So I think Gus Hamer, he just about slides in there. That being said, I think we've got a scenario where we've got a season where I don't think attacking quality has been at its best at all, especially with individuals. Not like we've seen in previous years. That might be to do with the quality around the division as well, but that's a discussion for another day. So as I say, I think this season probably may help us try and reshape how we view Player of the Season and Team of the Season.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because there hasn't been a standout player, particularly this season. There hasn't been a Mitrovic scoring 1 billion goals or Somerville taking games and single-handedly winning them. Having said that, I was surprised when Hamer won it. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Gustavo Hamer. I think he's a brilliantly talented player. When I saw the shortlist, I will be honest, I thought he was just there to make up the numbers because, just to have a player from each of the top 3 sides. Yeah. That's how I interpreted it initially. So to say he's been the standout player in the Championship of the season caught me by surprise. I initially thought to myself, would he even make our Team of the Season? Now, having given it further thought, he probably will. But the fact I'm even questioning it says something. And I didn't even have him as Sheffield United's Player of the Season when I picked a player for each team in the Championship. In a YouTube video I did not long ago, I had City Peck instead. So I don't agree with this one. I think either of the guys who were shortlisted would have been better choices, and there's at least 2 or 3 others not shortlisted who I would go for over him. So yeah, and it's completely subjective. I know that, but he wouldn't have been my choice, put it that way.
That's fair. There are other players. Look at Josh Brown, who scored 16 goals from midfield, for example. There are other players that you can consider are deserving. I don't really know, but it's just one of them where I just don't think there's been an outstanding candidate this year. I think it's been a very level playing field, unless you look at the game slightly differently. I mean, when we were predicting last year who we thought might get Player of the Season, I went for Ethan Ampadu because of how he impacts Leeds, how he impacts the play at Leeds. But he's a defensive-minded player. He was never going to win it. I just think maybe going forwards as a collective, football minds, everybody, just maybe needs to look at these things a little bit differently. Because Gus Hamer, I think, has got 7 assists and 9 goals this season. Not exactly outstanding. Very, very good, but not outstanding.
Yeah, which is why I'm surprised he got it. Yeah. And if you're looking for something that is outstanding, and I know Burnley fans are going to be fainting at me saying this, but you look at Burnley's defensive record this season, surely that was the outstanding thing. So whether it's James Trafford, whether it's Maxime Esteve, whoever, then if you're going off the logic you've been saying, Justin, then that's the approach I would have gone. But let's move on to the Team of the Season, which also seems to have rubbed people up the wrong way. So they had James Trafford in goal, a back four of Jayden Bogle, CJ Egan-Riley, Maxime Maxime Esteve and Harrison Burrows, a midfield of Ayo Tanaka, Joe Bellingham, Gustavo Hamer, and a front three of Dan James, Josh Sargent and Boya Sayeens. Again, we'll reveal our team of the season next week, Justin, and while giving away as little as possible, are you as pissed off as everyone else is about this team of the season, apparently?
I'm not banging my fist against the table, no. I'm not in a fit of rage, mainly because this team of the season, the second tier team of the season matters more. That's the main takeaway we'll say with this. But look, I shrugged my shoulders and I got on with my life after seeing this. That's a very mature point of view I have. But I look at the team, and I think a certain players in there, has Boy Size done anything since November?
Well, he's scored just 2 goals since the start of December. So
there we go. There's one. Joe Bellingham, I think, has had a very good season, but has he been an outstanding candidate in central midfield? I don't think so. They're very subjective. I'm not, as I say, not banging my fist against the table in a rage. Dan from Yorkshire has his team of the season. Carlos from Somerset has his team of the season. I have my team of the season. We all have our team of the seasons.
I was wondering who Dan from Yorkshire was then for a sec.
Just Dan from Yorkshire.
Who's that? Am I meant to know Dan from Yorkshire?
There will be a Dan from Yorkshire somewhere.
Oh yeah, I imagine there probably is. The chances are pretty high of that. But yeah, I don't think this is as bad as been made out online. It's always difficult to get a true consensus on social media nowadays of what people actually think, but you're never going to please everyone, are you? I don't agree with a few positions. I'm the same as you, really. Boya Sayeens, top scorer for most of the season. But if you've been as out of form as he has for 6 months, then I don't think you should be. I don't think you should be in the team of the season for me. I disagree with you. I think Joe Bellingham has been a standout central midfielder this season, but I don't think he's been as good in the second half of the season as he was in the first half of the season. This one's a bit of an admin thing for me. Gustavo Hamer as a centre mid, when he's only played 3 games centrally this season, is just wrong in my eyes. He's been on the left all season. So why is he in the centre? I don't understand that at all. That's annoyed me. And there are some players who have been left out who I think are simply more deserving than some in this team. So I'm not shaking my fist at the sky shouting EFL. I just disagree with some selections.
Yeah, but if you disagree with our team of the season, the second tier team of this season, I will come for you.
Yeah, he will. Don't think he's joking, ladies and gents. He will come for you. Well, Justin, you said you weren't getting too amped up about the team of the season. Let's see how you're feeling in a sec, because manager of the season was won by Burnley's Scott Parker. Which I just don't get, Justin. I don't get it at all. I don't get how, out of all the managers who have done brilliant jobs this season, it's deemed that Parker's done the best.
This feels personal. This is going to be a therapy session for you now.
It's not personal at all. It's just, if you're looking at it from a pure common sense point of view, I don't understand how he's done a better job than Tom Cleverley, John Eustace, Regis Lebris, Liam Manning or Gary Roward. And for that matter, I don't even look at it and think, has he done a better job than Daniel Farke? I think those two are on the same plane, really.
I would disagree. I think you're coming from it from a very sort of personal point of view, and you know what? That's absolutely fair. You have your manager of the season. I have mine. Dan from Yorkshire has his. Carlos from Somerset has his as well.
Yep.
But with Scott Parker, I do think it's deserved. I think any manager who guides a team to a 31-game unbeaten run, sets defensive record after defensive record,
got just as many points as Leeds,
while achieving promotion.
Just as many points as Leeds.
Okay, while achieving promotion, I think deserves the accolade. Certainly.
Has he done a better job than Daniel Farke?
Just as many points as you say. I think he has. I think he has done a better job. Yeah.
Having spent £46 million this summer.
Some of those transfers were pre-agreed going into this summer.
Still spent it.
I think he's had a harsher set of circumstances than Daniel Farke because of the squad being depleted towards the end of the transfer window. Daniel Farke had that last season, didn't have that this season.
Leeds lost 2 of the best players there's ever been in the Championship.
And they had the resource to go and replace them.
But they spent a fraction of what Burnley did.
But that's Leeds' problem. But they already had a collective quality of players. You had Brendan Harrison coming back from a loan spell, for example.
7 of Burnley's players who have been their most used 11 this season were in the Premier League with them last season.
Okay, that's fine. But as I say, I think Scott Parker's also shifted a style of play as well. He's got a team losing. And we've got to bear in mind, Leeds didn't bounce back at the first hurdle either. You know, they failed last season. So they had
They fell at a hurdle last season anyway with the playoffs, but I'm not too bothered about Daniel Farke. It's more Cleverley, Eustace, Labrie, Manning, Rowett. They're the five who I would go out and say they have simply done a much better job than Scott Parker has done this season. Because for me, Scott Parker has hit a par season. Like, if Burnley didn't get automatically promoted, that would have been a failure. Those five guys who I've mentioned there have all overachieved this season. No, tell me I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think the easiest way to summarise this, if John Eustace does end up keeping Derby in the Championship, he absolutely does deserve Manager of the Season. I know we're probably getting into what we talk about in the next couple of weeks, but there's a manager there who's vastly overachieved at two different clubs, and the success of one club, i.e. Blackburn, has been guided by him. And if they end up in the playoffs, it's been a magnificent season for him. But with Scott Parker, as I say, you've got to look at the promotion side of things, how relentless and consistent that they've been. He's done this as well by not having a set of strikers that have really delivered for him. Ian Fleming's had to be deployed as a false nine in recent weeks, for example.
Daniel Farke's got promoted with Vila Meslier in goal for most of the season.
Okay, that's Daniel Farke's manager of the season then.
I'm glad we sorted that one out. But do you agree with me? Those five managers who I've mentioned there are all ahead of Scott Parker.
No. I don't agree with that.
Which ones?
I would say John Eustace and Liam Manning, and that's it. I think Guy Rowett's done a fantastic job. And certainly in contention for manager of the season. But has he done a better job than Scott Parker? I don't think he has.
Tom Cleverley,
they've been on the terrible run since December. Watford have. Tom Cleverley has got a relegation standard squad and got them into mid-table. I think that's a huge amount of success. That being said, their run of form since December has been very, very poor.
Labrie?
I think Labrie's got a very good squad at his feet. They underachieved last season. I think everybody under-evaluated Sunderland's squad going into the summer.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from there, but I still think that is dampening down what he's done this season quite significantly, because it's still been an unbelievably
when we start to
season.
list things, we create a scenario where this manager's better than this manager. I don't think that's the case. I think every manager has a different set of circumstances, and they all maximise what they've got. And I think Scott Parker has had a more difficult set of circumstances than people may think. And again, what he's done this season, he's not relied on individuals. He's not had a Dom Solanke, he's not had an Alexander Mitrovic. I actually think some of his forward players have let him down a little bit. So I think he has achieved a fair bit. And again, the unbeaten run, the clean sheets, the goals conceded, it's just astounding that we will not see at this level again.
I genuinely think Leeds would have had very similar goals conceded numbers if they had James Trafford in goal instead of Ilan Meslier for the season.
Potentially, yeah, but they don't.
I think they would have done, though.
That's fair enough. Right?
Well, there you go. We'll leave that one there, because otherwise me and Justin will start having fisticuffs in a sec. Let's talk about Sheffield Wednesday, because the Sheffield Star is reporting that Dejphon Chansiri has rejected an approach from a US-based consortium for the club. Now, the club have responded to describing the bid as derisory and says it doesn't follow the criteria that Chansiri wants from any new investors. It has also been hinted that Adam Shaw may be involved, who's a US businessman who's expressed an interest in Sheffield Wednesday in the past. Chansiri has always said that he will sell Justin if an appropriate party come along, but then when someone does come along, it turns out they have to jump through a load of hoops to actually make him happy. Now, we don't know what that bid was. Maybe it was a derisory amount. I don't know. But from what I've read, I never get the sense Chansiri actually does want to sell the club unless someone's offering him the world.
There's always an element of Chansiri that you have to just take with a pinch of salt, because he's more outward than a lot of chairmen are, a lot of owners are. He speaks... He speaks with a lot of passion, doesn't he? He speaks with a lot of passion, and he knows he's up against it with the Wednesday supporters because of how poor it's been over the past sort of 6 or 7 years, maybe even longer than that. So there's a lot of that he needs to contend with, and I think any owner in the Championship saying, we're open to new investment, we're open to selling the club if the right bid comes along. You ultimately, that right bid has to be the perfect bid for the selling party, and that's what we've got here. Is Chansiri's clearly, the circumstances are clearly just not right for him. We don't know what those circumstances are. Only Chansiri and his close associates will know what that is. And unfortunately, we're going to be playing a waiting game and a guessing game until the right bid comes in, whatever that looks like, it could be, Chansiri might want bloody 500 million or something, which clearly is too much for a Championship club.
Well,
but we don't know.
It's been claimed in the past that if Chansiri is to sell the club, he still wants a large stake in the club. Now, that wouldn't be ideal, but it's workable. The problem comes if Chansiri is also asking for a massive amount of money and you're not even getting the whole club with what you're paying. The claim I've seen online is that Chansiri wants 120 million.
It's a lot for a Championship club.
That is. As I say, that's just a stake in a Championship club. The bid was allegedly, as I say, it's something I've seen online. The bid was apparently £43 million on this occasion. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if you're paying 120 million for what may effectively be slightly more than half of Sheffield Wednesday, then that means Chansiri thinks the club is worth over £200 million. And put it this way, Justin, if you had £200 million, would you buy a mid to lower Championship side when you're more than likely going to be forking out an extra few million each month to cover wages?
No.
Exactly. So I don't really get it. And Chansiri just continues to want to hold on to Wednesday for some unknown reason when the fans obviously don't want him there. Just take the money and run.
Yeah, you're losing a lot of money year on year, aren't you? Just purely from a business point of view, if you're losing a lot of money, you're not going to gain any money. You're not investing more money to get to the Premier League promised land where you're going to get this bag of cash come from the Premier League, are you? So yeah, I think logically you just take the money and run. I think 43 million allegedly, what is a low sum for a Championship club of Sheffield Wednesday's size. You're probably looking at a little bit more, but 120 is far too much, far too much. So yeah, there are a lot of hurdles to jump through, and Chansiri is probably the hardest person to try and buy from.
Yeah, well, you could say that again. Justin, I think we'll finish off by talking about something we didn't have a chance to chat about over the weekend. But it's time for us to cuddle each other and say everything's going to be all right, because Lukas Jutkiewicz is set to retire at the end of the season. He's made the decision at the age of 36. He's made 356 appearances for Birmingham in 9 years after joining them for just £1 million. He's the fourth all-time appearance maker in Championship history with 473, and he's eighth in the all-time top goal scorers list. A genuine Championship legend, Justin, and more importantly, a Birmingham City legend. He's stuck with them through thick and thin, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. The man who will haunt defenders at the back post. Any cross coming from the right-hand side or left-hand side into that far post, the Duke's winning it. And he's done that time and time again. That's been his just trademark, hasn't it? He's a brilliant player, and he really does deserve this amount of love, because you're right, he's stuck through it with Birmingham City. I've said it before on the podcast, this is the first season he's going to finish above 17th in a league season for Birmingham. He's been there 9 years.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's a ridiculous stat, and he deserves all the credit, all the love, and all the goodwill towards him, because a player who's stuck by a club who could have gone to another club and just had a very, very straightforward career. But he's become a Birmingham City legend, and in doing so, he's also a Championship legend.
One of your favourite players ever, isn't he, at Championship level?
Any target man, fits the bill. Let's be honest.
He is your classic example of big battering ram target man as well, isn't he?
But his left foot was an absolute hammer as well. I remember him scoring. He might have been on his Birmingham debut actually, against Derby, where there was a knockdown out on the edge of the box and there was a left foot hammer of a shot from him. It was an absolute pile driver. So he's got that ability. He's never been blessed with pace or mobility. But by God, if you put the ball in the air, he's winning it. Yeah, and works his socks off as well. He's been a leader at that club for such a long time, and I think that is really worth hammering down on, how he stuck with Birmingham through thick and thin. Because maybe he could have gone somewhere else and actually, accomplished a lot more than he did at Birmingham, because obviously Birmingham were an absolute mess for the vast majority of the time that he was there. And it's kind of poetic in a way that they're now on their way back, having had their most enjoyable season in a long, long time, and he's been there to see it through. Obviously, he hasn't played that much this season. I think he's made just about every appearance off the bench. But he's stuck with them when a lot of others would have happily just passed on and gone somewhere else. Yeah.
And they would have been in a lot worse state if he wasn't there as well. I think it's worth mentioning.
I was just about to say, if it wasn't for his goals and contributions in games, in those tight seasons where Birmingham were flirting with relegation before they were relegated last year, would the investors have even come in? Would Birmingham have been an attractive enough club for investors to come in if it wasn't for his contributions? Basically, playing a very big hand in keeping Birmingham in the Championship as long as they did.
You're not saying that the owners invested in Birmingham City because Lukas Jutkiewicz was there. They didn't look at...
Maybe I am.
Maybe you are. Maybe that is what you're saying.
I would.
But I think the point that you're trying to make is they could have very well been in League One several years ago.
Before,
yeah, if it wasn't for Lukas Jutkiewicz. And obviously they are in League One now, but the new owners got in when they're in the Championship still. So, it's a very important point to make, but one absolute legend at Championship level. Obviously played for a fair few other clubs as well. Mm-hmm. Quite sad he didn't play for Derby at one point. Yeah, because you would have been absolutely all over that.
They got his name on the shirt. Yeah,
it'd be expensive.
Oh God, yeah, so many letters. I can spell his name, without.
So can I. So can I. I'm one of the few people, because he's been in the Championship for so long. I could just spell his name without having to Google it now. So that's an accomplishment from us. But Lukas Jutkiewicz, whatever you do next in your career, I wish you very well, dear boy. There we go, ladies and gents. This has been a news roundup of everything going on across the Championship, and now all our gazers are cast ahead to the final day of the season. We will be back with you on Friday for the preview show, brought to you by SBK, as we look ahead to the final day, make some bloody predictions, and say how we think everything's going to end up. Who's going to finish in the playoffs? Who's going down? There's a lot at stake, and it promises to be a very, very exciting final day, ladies and gents. So we'll have the preview show, then we'll have the reaction to the final day on Sunday. Then, of course, we've got the second tier awards coming up straight up after that. So it's an exciting 7 days coming up, ladies and gents. We look forward to having you along for the ride. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.